So the first thing that I do always like to touch on before we just jump in, Christina, is when students enroll, part of your enrollment signs your media release for any time you're in class, your face, that kind of stuff. So, but I do always just like to say like, hey, we're having this conversation. It's going to go in the course. It'll probably go on the YouTube channel, that kind of stuff. If you have a problem with that, now is your time to say, hey, I never read the agreement when I signed it or when I signed up. So, okay. We're good? Okay. Legal stuff, right?
Get it done.
Okay, so I am going to have you, let me just back up. So for anybody watching this, whether it's somebody in the program or somebody who's thinking about coming into the program, you might have already found this, that I have done interviews with students in the past because I thought it would have been nice for me to have that when I was just starting out. I had no idea what business looked like. I had no idea what anything else looked like or what anybody else's journey was. So I learned about doing this when I got my nutrition certification because they did it. And I thought, oh my gosh, it was so great. Because I went back through and I took notes of like, okay, this is how Emily started her practice and this is what she charged and this was her process. And it was so helpful. And then I did Kelsey's follow-up. She's the only one so far that has done her year follow-up. So we're going to be following you because you are wanting to be the next Kelsey, and you have a deadline. So we'll get to that. So first things first, for anybody watching, I have questions that we just kind of go off of. So I have those over here. I'm just going to read them. So the first one, Miss Christina, is please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what brought you to Myo, how you first heard about it. How did you know it was for you? We'll start with that and then I'll jump on the other ones.
Yeah. So I first heard about Myo while I was finishing my bachelor's degree for the dental hygiene program. I did a degree completion program, and in my last semester, we took a course called Alternative Careers for Dental Hygienists, which was interesting because we got to kind of pick one career and deep dive into it. So most of my peers were studying what it would look like to do public health or maybe work in education. But I really was like, what would I actually want to do? What would I want to explore? So I had seen a few things in, trade magazines and dental hygiene journals about orofacial myofunctional therapy, and it kind of sparked an interest. So I thought, let me, do this. So I submitted it to my instructor and she was like, oh, that's interesting. I've never heard of that before. And she's been in the field for 30 years. And I was like, well, it's a thing. And a lot of hygienists are doing it. And it's actually really interesting. So I went ahead and deep dove it into this course. And then after interviewing multiple practicing therapists in different states around the country and kind of just getting their feedback on how they got into it and what they enjoyed about it, I decided this is really something I want to do. Like, I want to practice this. Like, this is cool, So that's really kind of what got me started in it.
I love that because I mean, I was that person Googling, alternative careers for dental hygienists. What could I do without going back to school? I mean, all of the things I had already gone and gotten a master's in business, because I thought an MBA was going to be the answer. And let me tell you, if there's anything worse than scraping teeth, because remember, I didn't love dental hygiene. So I was just like, oh, good Lord, if there's anything worse than scraping teeth, it was like doing dental consulting because I thought, oh my gosh. And when I saw some of the alternative careers, I was like, shoot my toe off.
Yes.
No way do I want to go into research or sales or, so that is crazy. What just kind of bubbled up for me when you were talking about that is, is it bad that in your in your degree completion course that they have you look at
Yeah, it was kind of like a flag. Like I'd already been doing clinical hygiene for 2.5 years when I went back for my bachelor's. So I was already like, I feel like I need to have a bachelor's in order to even do any of these sales or education. But yeah, that struck me as a little strange. Like, do a lot of people want out of this field?
I know, that's what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
Wait, that just totally goes against, because I always say, hey, if you have plan B, you're not serious about plan A. And if Like,
And if the teachers are like, what's plan B? I'm like, wow, they were mentioning carpal tunnel surgeries and neck and back surgeries. And I'm like, I'm feeling that too. In year 2, I need a plan B.
yeah, I know. And knock on wood. I mean, I don't have to knock on wood now because I'll never pick up a hygiene instrument.
Yeah.
I will work at the fuel pump store before I go back
Yes.
to hygiene.
I will make lattes before that.
I just can't, I just could not do that to myself. But I knew people who were in hygiene that were in year 1, between year 1 and year 2, having neck surgery. And I
Yeah.
just thought, oh my gosh, my own personal hygienist is out 8 months now. And the crazy thing for him is he went into the military. He got, his hygiene school paid for, all of that stuff. And when I just met him for my last cleaning, he was just fascinated with what I was doing. And he said, I am this close to retirement. I am doing it. And now he's out.
Good. Good
So
for him.
he's out with injuries.
Oh, no, he's just on a break. Well, hey, maybe this is his time to
Yeah,
figure out what he wants to do,
yeah,
because you can't live a life when you're injured all the
yeah.
time.
Yeah, he had to have surgery, and my dentist, which was my old boss, said that he's out for at least 8 months and maybe
Oh,
never can practice hygiene again,
yeah.
which is also hard. So, okay, so that answers how you heard about it. And how you knew it was for you. So tell us a little bit about um, where you're at and what kind of business are you going to build?
So I'm in Austin, Texas, the great place of Austin. We keep it weird down here.
Weird, yeah.
Which but I'm really hoping to build a hybrid practice. I know a lot of people that go into this are strictly virtual, but I still want that patient connection that you get with face to face. And it might fluctuate as I move forward in this program, but I'd like to be able to see people, whether it be in their office, like a dental office or an ortho office. Potentially work with speech therapists that don't have any experience in myofunctional therapy, and then also offer that virtual piece, because I know there's a lot of people that do teletherapy. And I don't want anyone to have a barrier to care when it comes to access. So I want to be able to help anybody in any way. But yeah, more of a hybrid
Yeah.
practice.
Well, and you'll kind of fill that out, and what works for you, what doesn't, if you have certain days. Gosh, that just gave me the goosebumps for some reason. I do have a friend who is a colleague also in the field, and she kind of does the same thing. She does all of her exams in person, but again, she has a different type of a practice because, like, I have people in Hong Kong,
Yeah.
So it's kind of limiting our business model is a little bit different, but as long as it fills your cup,
Yeah.
that's the thing. With the type of business that I was building, it wasn't going to work for me. And also, I mean, I don't know if your traffic is as bad as what my traffic was in Fort Collins, Colorado, because I'm pretty sure the city was laid out by a drunken Irishman, but still just as bad. And so, especially now after COVID, when people have learned about doing things online, people are like, no, I don't want to leave home for that. I want to just be able to do it from the comfort of my own home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you,
absolutely.
you
And
get
so meeting
lost.
meeting the needs of everybody. Everybody has different needs. So that's
Yeah,
great. I love
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, and you're in a metropolitan area, so you've got, growth potential. I always just knew, like, I wanted to never be in one place. I wanted
Yeah.
to just be virtual. Okay, so tell us your why. You might have already touched on this, I don't remember, but
Well, my why really comes from a place of just wanting to help people that are falling through the cracks. I feel like I had a lot of patients in the dental office that had airway issues, and one after another, it was just put it on the treatment plan that they need an occlusal guard. And it was like, but have they had a sleep study done? Like, they're not breathing. They're telling me other symptoms that I think are related to airway issues. So I did more research on that. And then it just became, it was also personal. Years prior, my oldest son was grinding his teeth when he was around 4 or 5 years old. And I took him to the pediatric dentist, and they said, oh, it's fine. Most kids do it. He'll outgrow it. No big deal. But my baby wasn't sleeping. He was having behavioral issues. He was wetting the bed. Like, he had all these symptoms. But I didn't know why. So the more I start to research and get second opinions, that's when we realize, okay, we need to see an ENT. The ENT says his tonsils are too big for his poor little throat. He's not sleeping because he's not breathing. So for me, my why is really personal. I see it in my own kids. I see it in kids walking around, in the stores, and I want to be able to help these people. I want to help them realize, hey, what's wrong? It could be something as simple as they're not breathing through their nose. Their tongue is in the wrong place. So I just want to fill this gap that I feel like we have in healthcare today.
Yes, that's awesome. Again, goosebumps. And the thing is, I do think that Kelsey had a very similar situation with her kiddos, like discovered that they were tongue tied, all of this stuff. But anytime I have a student who has really something personal, I didn't have it personal to me, but my granddaughter, the tongue tie, and so whenever you can teach and connect with people with something that is more personal, like, hey, how am I doing this? There is such a need for parents to know, because they just don't know. They're
Yeah.
used to going to their doctor and being told, like, just trusting that that person knows it. Well,
Yeah.
you have already experienced the silo mentality, and we're the ones. That's why you will always hear me harping, start with us, because
Yeah.
we don't have allegiance to anybody.
Right.
Most of us don't. And I never want any of my students to have allegiance. It was funny because I was driving home from the gym yesterday, re, talking to myself as I drive, of certain conversations that I have recently had with exams or clients. And I, in my outside voice, said, I am so glad that the toes that I step on are not connected to the butt I have to kiss.
Right.
So true. And I always tell potential clients, hey, there is no lover's triangle here. What I say goes. If you want to work with me, you got to do my dream team, and that sounds very, very brash. And I definitely say it so it's more gentle. But like, if I'm saying you can't have an appliance in there while we're preparing for a release, we can't have an appliance in there while we're preparing
Yeah.
for a release. I don't care what your orthodontist says.
Right.
I'm happy to get on a phone call with them, but I'm not arguing with them. There is no lover's triangle here. It's my way or the highway, and that sounds like I don't collaborate very well or play nice with others. But do you know how many times the others, like, everybody has their agenda,
Yeah.
and like the night guard,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
let's just give you a night guard. Yeah.
Let's find the root cause, let's figure out why.
Yeah. And I'm just seeing a huge rash of whatever these rubbery night guard. I mean, they've been around even since I was in hygiene, but I can't remember what they're called. But it's like a football mouth guard or
Yeah.
boiling type of thing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
so now we just have something to grind against at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's look at let's look at the root cause. Okay. Do you have any previous business knowledge?
No, I really don't. I'm a hygienist through and through. I was a soldier before that, so business is not my jam. I One of the main reasons that I chose the Ditch Hygiene Academy was because I saw that your course fills in all those little gaps that I don't know. You give us tax implications, you talk about how to stay organized, you talk about how to run a business. I want to know the back end. So that was a big part of why I pulled the trigger with the Ditch Hygiene Academy.
Yeah. And it's so important because, again, there's a lot of therapists out there, and we may get to this because let me look. I don't want to get ahead. No, funny that that isn't on the list. So you had already had training.
Yeah.
How is that not on the list? Oh my goodness.
I was gonna throw that in there, but I'm like, I don't want to. Only
Yeah,
if you ask me.
no, that's crazy. So you had already done your training. How long ago was that?
So I took that course when I was in that college class. So as soon as I finished that college class and I got my degree, I went and flew to Orlando and took a 28-hour course. And again, I was super excited to take that course. I learned a lot, but then when I came home, I was like, where the heck am I supposed to start? I talked to my boss in the dental office, I talked to my patients, but I also was like, how do I run a business? Like, how do I market myself? I did it with a colleague and she was like, well, I made business cards. And I was like, but that's not really going to get us anywhere. So it was a big piece of the puzzle missing. It was like they told us how to do Myo, they told us how to find patients, but nothing else. And if you don't have an MBA like you do, Miss Carmen, we're going to be struggling.
Well, and an MBA, a lot of people think that that's what gave me my edge.
Yeah.
And actually, it is so wrong because an MBA, like accounting, I can run Exxon, but I couldn't, buy a domain.
Okay.
So yeah, so a master's in business, like, and we're talking old school, like I'm talking a bound marketing plan.
Yeah.
That type of stuff. So an MBA, yeah, there's things, but I think really what I took away from that is the ability to go all in on myself and everything is figure outable. Thanks,
It's
Marie.
bootstrapping, right? You got to
Yeah.
bootstrap it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that MBA, aside from the accounting and, that kind of stuff, but like, I don't do accounting like I learned in grad school. I mean, I have 17 hats does my
Yeah.
account.
Yeah. I think so. A lot of things probably change in a short amount of
Yeah. Oh,
time too, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So would I go back and I would love to have that 50K in my bank. Um, and it was
Valid. Yeah.
crazy because I kind of got the MBA thinking, oh, this seems challenging. I think I'll try this. And I did it, and I never want to do it again. So, but I do hear that a lot about people with other courses. And so that was my question is, in those courses, obviously I've never taken them. So my question just kind of off of that was, you learn the Myo skills, but they don't, that's
No
my, they
business.
don't give
No
you any,
business. Yeah. And
yeah,
unfortunately, most of them were speech therapists. So they were already in a private practice where they could easily implement it under their own name. It was a little bit different. It's different for a hygienist.
yeah, it absolutely is. And I did have a student years ago in Canada who took her training from somebody who clinically was very knowledgeable, but had never practiced.
Right.
And so it was kind of reminded me of grad school where I had, 22-year-old, 23, 24-year-old, I guess not 22, but like 24, 25-year-old grad school teachers that had never moved out of mom's basement telling me how to, and I was like,
Should
wait,
I be taking their advice?
but that was her frustration because she was trying to get her certification because in her province in Canada she had to be certified and she just could not get anything going. So then she came and did my year-long course. But yeah, she did say that the person who taught her was very knowledgeable clinically, but had never actually practiced. And I thought, that is so interesting. So okay, um, I'm glad we touched on that because that was one of the things that is so you're not the first. You were by any means, you are not the first student that I'm teaching that has taken another one of those courses. The cool thing that you get to do with the information that I teach you is you chew up the fish and spit out the bones. If there's something that I teach, I do think that a lot of our teachings are all very similar. But if there's something that you like better or you like a different process, like you get to decide all of that stuff. So, okay, so we talked about previous business knowledge. All right. What decisions have you made so far and any big deadlines that you're working towards? I'm baiting you with this one, aren't I?
Yeah, yeah. Big decisions. So big decisions for me, actually, just within the past 24 hours. I was planning to continue to temp in dental hygiene because I felt like it's a good way to maybe get patients. But the more I'm learning through your course, the more I'm realizing probably not a lot of patients are going to come out of the dental office. So I've decided I'm not going to temp anymore. I'm going to give this my go because, I have a hard goal of wanting to finish this come 2025. So I'm just going to focus on this full time. I'm not messing with hygiene. I was really just doing it for the extra money. We can survive off one income just fine. So I'm going to focus on Myo full time and really give this my all. My big deadlines, again, I'm going to be 40 in January. So that has a lot of my goal was this is a goal I set back in 2017 when I first took this course, was I wanted to have this done because I have pain from clinical hygiene. So being able to have this under my belt and have the confidence to know that I can run a business on my own because I have all the tools in this program really gives me the push that I need to meet these deadlines.
That's exciting. The only thing, and I throw this out here in case you have those moments where you're like, do I want to temp occasionally or whatever? I do wholeheartedly believe that you don't get client, you're not going to find your ideal customer in the operatory. Very rarely. I can't even, like, on two hands I can count the business that came out of the operatory. The only thing, the only downside of you not being in the operatory, or at least temping, is having those conversations. So that's because, you know, I know this sounds totally vulgar, but when I always say I'm raping people's ears, like, like I'm talking to them, that is one of the ways that I got really, really good. So you're going to have to get really good at talking to yourself, making sure that you, Kelly, one of my students in the past, would get her, like, she would write down what she wanted to say to certain things, and then she would record herself explaining it and stuff. And then she would listen to her recordings, like her voice memos, while she mowed the lawn and rode in her car.
I love that. I've been doing something very similar. Like, I've also been ear raping. If I have 4 kids. I mean, I have 4 kids, so I go to a lot of extracurricular activities, and I'm an introvert, so I tend to not talk to people unless I have to, but I've really been putting myself out there lately, and they were like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'm a hygienist, but and then they're like, what is it called again? And then I'll explain it. And so I am getting better with my verbiage.
Yes, yes. And I do. It's so funny. Scott laughs at me all the time because I always say it's on my walk and talk with God when I'm out hiking with, and I'm just talking to the universe, and I'm always like looking behind my shoulder to make sure that somebody is not hiking behind me, because that's where I just talk through things, or how I would answer this, or how I would answer that. And that is the important thing, is because I don't want my students sounding like they're selling a used Subaru. And I have listened to therapists. I go to conferences at times, and I have listened to people talk, and I'm like, oh God, that's painful. Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. That's bad. And I also see it like in Facebook groups and that kind of stuff. I stay out of a lot of Facebook groups these days. But same thing. Like it just, if it smells like desperation, you know, so just being practiced. So that was my only thought. I love that you have the ability to have the runway to go all in on your dream. That's what I did. I mean, I bootstrapped this baby, you know, and I know people who are spending money, you know, to do all these things. And then, like, aside from the course, like you can do this without going into a huge amount of debt. So that's
and
awesome.
I see that path now. I see that path now.
Yeah. And trust me, I have gone, like, I've done the bell curve. I've gotten where I'm making, you know, a lot of money and I'm spending it on stupid things. And now I'm back to simplifying. I used to just really have to have every piece of tech and every program. And now I'm like, Google Calendar. I do my total calendar control 100%. That's it. You know, like very, very minimum.
We can get by with a lot less than we think we can sometimes.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So we talked about that. What kind of brave conversations are you having? So I guess this is going to go back to, well, you commented that at extracurricular activities, you're getting through with it.
So that's definitely one of them. I met a pharmacist at the gym with my son the other day, and I told her all about it. And she was like, oh, I think I've actually heard of that. My daughter had a tongue tie when she was a baby, and we worked with somebody, and they had a release done. And so I had a good conversation with her. I was like, oh, tell me more. You know, she told me all about it. I did not get the name. No, I should have, but I've had more conversations with her, and we traded phone numbers. And so I'm definitely having these conversations with anybody that's like, hi. I'm like, hi, let's talk about Myo. Also, so while I was still trying to temp a few weeks ago, I had reached out to a dentist that was looking for a hygienist that is into myofunctional therapy. So I immediately reached out to him. We set up a meeting and I met with him last week. I was very nervous because I don't want his hygiene position. I want to be his myofunctional therapist.
Yeah.
So we had a very candid conversation, and he asked me what my goals were. And I was like, honestly, I don't want to be stuck in a hygiene operatory anymore. I have too much up here that I want to be able to help patients with. And if I'm stuck scaling all day long, I can't help patients in this way. So he was very eager to, let me add you to my list. I have another myotherapist that I work with, but I feel like the more the better. So once I get my feet a little bit wetter with this program and build a little bit more confidence in what I'm doing and how to implement the therapy, I'm hoping he's one of my first contacts that I'll be able to use.
Yes. I have a thought on that. I'm going to pause this for just a sec. My little dog. Oh gosh, I'm trying to pause the wrong recording going on. Okay. And that's excellent. So you're calculated with your thinking, like business wise. I have an agenda wise, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but when you get your feet a little bit wetter, like right now they're damp.
Yes, exactly.
Just a little bit wetter. That's a great opportunity to, get a referral, get a practice client. I never want anybody to do too much for free because I think it's too valuable. But your best free marketing is getting results for somebody else. And so that's how I have gotten a lot of sole referral positions. Sole referral positions, not the right thing, but practitioners that refer to me because they would have a list of, a handful of therapists, and they just start dwindling them down when they say, oh my gosh, Susie's clients are nowhere like your clients. Can we, and I have several providers in several states who keep me very busy. And I love that, and it always just makes me feel so good when they call and say, hey, we just saw your client so-and-so, and we've never seen anybody that prepared, which also really saddens me.
Yeah.
On why am I, because I'm not doing anything extraordinary. Why are we having that big of a difference? But I've had doctors text me after releases and say, I don't know what you do, but I have never had a client so prepared.
Yes, that's great. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So it's nice because you've got an opportunity, and also some offices do just kind of spread the wealth, if you will. So spread the business. They'll refer to so-and-so, so-and-so. But if you start having, better, like they see really great results with children, or also personality is a thing. Like my provider in Montana, when he started referring to me, there was already somebody there, but they weren't a personality match for everybody. And he was like, oh my goodness, like this is just a breath of fresh air. But like, I'm not for everybody. And you'll learn this in the course. I say, like, if you, or I say the same thing about my associate, she's just like me. And there's a reason for that, because people who are drawn to me aren't going to want to work with somebody who's very, very quiet and nothing like me. So I always tell people, like, if you love me, you're going to love Jess. And if you don't love me, you're screwed, because you're not.
Go find somebody else.
So those brave conversations, I truly do think are one of the ways to get your leads, and building those relationships with people. Everybody that we know knows somebody who can use our services.
Exactly.
Who has somebody who is struggling with sleep, who is struggling with weight. Nobody thinks about Myo like a weight loss remedy.
Mm.
Because that's not necessarily something that we think about. But I have tons of clients, and it's not just because that I have my nutrition expertise as well. I have so many clients that are just like, I have weight problems, I have motivation problems, I have mental health problems. It all just then comes back to sleep, which is the root of our health. So,
Yeah.
um, everybody knows somebody, but the problem is a lot of students don't want to have conversations. So I love that. I'm an
Yeah.
introvert, believe it or not, I'm an introvert as well. I will sit somewhere by myself and I won't talk to a soul
Yeah.
unless somebody talks to me. And so it is, and it's funny because we'll go to a wedding or something and Scott will look across the room and be like, oh, for the for the love of Pete, she has her tongue out of her mouth.
Yeah, I love it though. I find myself talking about it all the time. And my husband's like, see what it's like when you love something, how you talk about it all the time, because he's always talked about his work. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. I've never talked about hygiene this way, but I talk about myo this way.
Yeah. Yeah. Nope. Scott says the same thing. And it's funny because also I recently did some coaching about leads, or like, students that are saying, hey, it's not Field of Dreams. People aren't just showing up.
Right.
And so we talked about, like, do people know that what you're doing? Do they know that your doors are open for work, or for contacts, for leads? And then can they explain what you do? So I said to Scott, I said, can you explain what I do? And he goes, oh my gosh. And he starts this, and he just
Yeah.
starts imitating me. And it was so funny because my granddaughter, who's now a junior in high school, I have videos of her playing myofunctional therapy. She would come to my office and she would get the microphone and she would record it. Well, she doesn't realize I have all those recordings, and she,
Oh, I love it.
hi, I'm Christy Sadler, and I am your myofunctional therapist, educator extraordinaire. And, but she was watching me. So yeah,
That's
it
great. I love it. Yeah, you
really,
talk about what you're passionate about, which is wonderful.
yeah. And then you don't have, I always tell people, I don't sell anything a day in my life. I educate. Here's what expertise I can bring to the table for you. Um,
It feels more organic.
yeah.
Yeah. Not
Yep.
sleazy
Yep.
like
I
a
don't want to sell
commercial.
somebody a used Subaru. And
Yep.
that's, in hygiene, I sucked. I was not cold calling. I was not working recall. I refused because I went to school for too long and I wasn't a salesman.
Yeah.
I, Okay, what boundaries are you going to have to set to meet those deadlines?
Boundaries are tough. Lots of saying no to my partner, to my friends, to my kids. And it's not no, never. It's just no, not right now, because this is the schedule that I have in place and this is what I need to get done. So I've been really strict about my hours. Somebody will knock on the office door. Hey, mom, can we do this, that? No, we can do that in 2 hours. So it's really just sticking with my schedule. And learning how to say no. Like sometimes people might be disappointed by that, but I have goals that I want to accomplish and I need boundaries. So I've really gotten good about my boundaries.
That's awesome because they're going to kind of ebb and flow.
Hmm.
I'm really good with my boundaries, and then I'm really bad, because then it's like, well, I'm the boss. I'm the CEO. I can do whatever, and then I get in my own way. And then I get, like, play cards and have a martini at 2 o'clock on a Friday.
Right.
Yeah.
Count
And
me in.
yeah, count me in. And when Scott had his knee replaced, I felt very grateful that I could take care of, but then he was in my space for 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, oh Lord, get out of my space. But it'll be interesting to see how you do. Those boundaries are, it's okay to disappoint people, to put yourself first. As wives, as moms, it's hard for us to do. Even for me, like, I don't have kids at home, but when I see a daughter calling, when I see a text come through from my granddaughter, when my daughter needs help,
Right.
I most of the time, and if I can, I will shuffle things around, but sometimes that's what's really hard for me, is because I'm here to be able to help with the kids.
Yeah. But you're busy doing other things that you need to get done.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody else just thinks I sit around and eat bonbons. Just like, God. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's fine for me for something that comes from FedEx. I think he thought because it was Wednesday, it's my personal day off. And then I was like, I have a Zoom call. It arrived before we got online, which is good.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
So how will you get in your own way, and what is your strategic plan to avoid that? So maybe boundaries was part of that. What else?
Boundaries was part of that. Yeah, definitely learning to say no, but also the decision making. Sometimes I will get caught in the decision making. I'm very type A, want it to look perfect. So, really learning the importance of your most viable product. I really need to focus on just get it out there. Like, I'm not a myofunctional therapist yet, but I can tell people what I'm working on becoming, what I'm working towards, you know? So, just planting seeds. So, I think the biggest barrier for me is really just focusing on the decisions I've made, moving forward with those decisions, and keeping my schedule firm around that.
Good. Because you make decisions and you take ugly and perfect action, and you can always come back. Now, as you're finding in the program, we don't keep making decisions. We get
Yes.
we get data to back them up.
Yep.
And then, do I need to change this? Do I need to change this? But taking that ugly and perfect action, the only person who knows that it's ugly and imperfect is you.
That's right. Yep.
Because I was coaching one of the students the other day, and it was her first coaching with me. And I asked her, her strengths and her weaknesses, that kind of stuff. And so I can use that as ammunition against her when she's having trouble in places. And we were talking about like perfectionism, procrastination, and people pleasing. And I said, well, you don't have to tell me that, because we're dental hygienists. We have the 3 P.
Yep, we do.
And also, and I think, just keeping our blinders on, running our race. There's other therapists out there. It's funny because my virtual assistant did some content for me the other day, and I had to laugh when one of my competitors, I don't know how she got her picture, but it's on my content. And I'm like, oh, sweetheart, you can't put my competitor.
Whoops.
Oh goodness. But I don't care what anybody else is doing. Somebody said something the other day about Dr. Zoggy is in expansion. And I said, oh, no idea. Like I have to be on social media so much for my own business. I don't care what everybody else is doing. So
yeah, and you shouldn't. You focus on what you're doing. Don't compare yourself. Comparison is the thief of joy.
exactly. Yes. And I always, and you'll see this in the program, I want you to be different. I don't want you to just be a mouthpiece saying the same thing. I mean, we all do it because there's only so many different ways you can talk about a tongue tie and a tongue thrust and that kind of stuff, but just finding a different way or saying something different, or, it's every day it's a challenge. Okay. So how are you staying organized?
Trello. I
Have you
love
worked with
it.
Trello before?
It took me, no, I've never worked with it before. It took me
Awesome.
a minute to really get used to it. But now that I have it, I find myself every morning like using it for other things besides the Ditch Hygiene Academy. Like, hey, what's on my schedule for this week? And it really it helps me stay organized. I like it a lot. Also, my Google Calendar, I've stacked out every little thing so that I know exactly what I'm doing from each hour to the next. So that's been really helpful.
Yes. And it is so helpful. So you'll be getting into you'll see the end of your workflow when, you're going to say, this will be more exciting next year at this time. I absolutely look forward to that because I just love going back. I use my calendar as a diary of, hey, this is what I did. It's like when we put things on a to-do list to check it off. I put things on my calendar just to make sure. So organization is key. And if I can offer any advice, it's stay organized from the beginning.
Yeah.
I did not. And now that I have thousands of documents and thousands of files, and sometimes I am in my own way for that reason. And then, I'll always say, oh, in my because I take the 2 weeks off from the last 2 weeks of December. And it's always like, oh, I'll get my organization. No,
No, you
no, so
won't.
my goal is always just stay organized going forward. There's a mess back there, you know, but it's super duper helpful. Okay, yay. I love this one. What was your first impression with the Ditch Hygiene Academy? So you kind of already alluded to it a little bit, but obviously just making the decision to get into the program versus what you found when you got in there, or like what you're feeling now that you've been going through some of the stuff. What do you have to say for yourself?
Well, I really like it. I'm really happy that I found this program, and timing is everything because I've been looking for a myo mentor for a while, and I had a few people that I kind of had it narrowed down to. And then one day I was like, I'm really going to do this today. And that's when you came up, the first time I'd ever seen anything about you before. And I was like,
Crazy.
okay, let me watch. I watched a video. I met Kelsey. Whoa, like this is different. This is covering everything, A to Z. This is what I've been looking for. Once I pulled the trigger, which wasn't an easy thing to do, but I talked to my husband about it. He was like, if this is going to cover all those missing pieces, do it. So I got in, and now that I see it, I get so excited when I'm scrolling down the left and I'm like, oh, there's an example of this. There's an example of that. There's no piece left unturned. Like anything that you could possibly have a question about, it's there. There's a document you want to look at, it's there. There's a resource, it's there. Everything I could possibly need is in the Ditch Hygiene Academy.
Well, there's still some more stuff that you need, but it's coming in there. It's
I
just
like
like,
it. Well, that's great. I don't even know I need it yet then.
no, you don't even know. And the other thing is, of course, I also have a Trello board full of things that I want, that I think would be helpful, that I've learned, all of these things. And it takes time to do those things and create those things. But that is the nice thing about the program, is whenever I'm talking to somebody about it, I say, if it's not in there and you are the person who needs help on doing A, B, and C, like I'm the knowledge broker, because I spend tens of thousands of dollars every year on my business coaching and stuff. So then we get it put in there,
Yeah.
so that's the exciting thing. So it'll just continue to
It'll
get
just
more
get better. Yeah.
overwhelming,
That's
because
great.
for some people, they're like, oh my gosh, what do I need? What do I need? I get this question a lot. What do I need to make money? And I say, you need to get through stage 1. I was 12 weeks in. Kelsey was 16 weeks in. And then you're off to the races. Like I think having a paying client before then, I did have one of my students that had a paying client, like very early on. Like we met for a monthly coaching, and I was like, wait,
Wow.
somebody already paid you. But then when we worked through it, I was like, okay, so tell me about the exam. And she was like, haven't done an exam.
Oh.
So basically she saw the money and grabbed it, and
Oh,
like
yeah.
threw out a number, and they were like, okay, nightmare client, never. And I said, that's not how you can practice,
Yeah.
especially if you want to say I trained you, because
Right.
you need to make sure that you're the right person for them. Nothing's gonna look worse than you just getting paid and not getting results for them, which I will be the first to say, you will not get results for everybody. And that's not necessarily on you. That's on your client. I have a file this thick of people who quit therapy. They never finish. People are quitters, sadly, which is why I also don't suggest the model of one session at a time. That's why we do a package. But so she would have been the world record, but it was just an accident thing. It wasn't organized. Also sometimes, and you probably already know this, sometimes we don't go first. Sometimes somebody needs expansion, or we have to send them to the ENT, or they need this, or they need that. So, I have had a ton of children that I have sent for sleep studies, and they needed rapid palatal expansion because they had severe apnea. They got put on CPAPs. I needed to step back a little bit. Like one little girl, it was at least a year before then we were ready. So there's always that feeling of like, I want to get my fingers in the money pot here, but at
Right.
the end of the day, I want to sleep. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I always say I have a reputation to protect, but more importantly, I want to sleep. Okay. So last, what would you say to someone who is considering jumping into myofunctional therapy?
I would say do your research. Don't pull the trigger on the most cost effective course necessarily, or the one that's most convenient to your location. Do your research. There's a lot of courses out there, and a lot of these courses are not going to help you become the myofunctional therapist that you want to be. Like I told you with my course that I took, it was 28 hours. It was over a course of 4 days, but you described it perfectly. It was like drinking from a water hose. I took all this information in the short amount of time and then wasn't really told how to use it. So if you're thinking about doing myofunctional therapy, definitely do the research before you pull the trigger. Cost and value does not always equal the same thing.
Exactly. And you just gave me goosebumps again. And that is so true, because in the end, it doesn't, like, if it gets you where you want to go. And that's one thing whenever I'm meeting with students or potential students, like, what is it that you desire?
Mm-hmm.
Is the course, the person that you're considering is that going to get you there? And, and some people do want to do myo in an office. Now that you're kind of experiencing this going out on your own, like I just laughed yesterday, because I think I made a reel that was like, because I got asked a question, how do I start a myofunctional therapy practice in my practice? And I'm like, don't. Don't do it, because it's your business. Yes, if your boss wants you to do it, they also refer to an endodontist and a pedodontist and a periodontist, like they can refer to you, but it is your thing,
Yeah.
So I think everybody needs to be able to start their own business, and some people don't look at it that way, but they do look at the cost, which for some people is the driving factor. But
Yeah.
I got done with my course, same type of situation, and I was like, what do I do with this? So you have to be able to implement the knowledge. That's the biggest thing, and so that's what we really work hard to make sure happens. So I always say your success. I'm not successful till you're successful. And that's not necessarily just financially. That means getting through the program. You have a deadline. So
Yeah. Feeling confident in what you do, being confident in talking to providers. Yeah.
yeah. And doing the work. Like I have several coaching calls where it's like, hey, what are you doing? Well, I'm not being consistent. I'm not setting boundaries, all of those things. So you're off to a good start. So I can't wait to see, how things go. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this. This is going to be gold. And you're going to be really proud of yourself when you look back, because again, we as hygienists or maybe it's just type A personalities, but it's like, okay, I accomplished something, check, move it on.
Yep.
Check, move it on. And I never sit back and celebrate things. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I really did that. Or
Yes. Look at me go. Woo.
yeah, I'm always just like on to the next metric, on to the
Yeah.
next, on to the next.
Yeah.
And we all have a different currency. For me, I was very money driven at first, and now I am time driven. I want to have time. I want to be present with my grandkids, and when Scott walks through the door at 4:30 at night, I want to be like, where were you?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all right. Well, I look forward to getting this out for everybody, and thank you for coming. And I'm so glad that you're in the program.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
All right. Well, we'll keep track of you. We'll see how you're doing.
All right. Thanks, Carmen.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.